Welcome to Sagas Sass, Season 3. I'm Tara, along with fellow hosts Nick and Jonathan.
This episode will cover parts 1 and 2 of Arm of the Sphinx, the second installment of Josiah Bancroft's Books of Babel series.
If you're watching live, join us in the chat, or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sagas and Sass to continue the conversation. And just as a reminder, the views expressed in the show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole.
All right. Well, when we say we're back with Senlin and crew in Arm of the Sphinx, we mean that more literally than you'd think, because as it turns out, after absconding with the Stone Cloud at the end of Senlin Ascends, they quickly turn to piracy themselves after failing to immediately gain access to Pelphia. But they're pretty half-assed pirates, considering they only take what they need to survive, and it doesn't help that Senlin is still having visions of his missing wife Maria and trying to keep it from everyone else while using the ship log as a diary in which he details these visions. So, of course, Edith finds out when she goes to update the ship log, and this happens in conjunction with them getting blacklisted from the pirate port Windsock, because Velita steals a flying squirrel from a merchant, and then Iron doesn't think twice about throwing said merchant to his death when he threatens Velita. Granted, this last visit of theirs to Windsock at least gives Senlin some information about how he might get into Pelphia. He meets with Madame Bata, who receives information and records everything that goes on in the tower and tells him about a man named Luke Marat. Marat lives in the Silk Reef, the ringdom above Pelphia, and apparently one can use the Hod's Black Trail to enter Pelphia from the gardens. Senlin deduces that he can steal some books to bring to Marat as a gift in return for his help getting into Pelphia, but things go awry yet again soon after they have gathered the books they need.
Seriously, between Edith being more than a little annoyed with Senlin for keeping his Maria visions from her, and the fact that they now don't really have anywhere to go except the mysterious Silk Reef, you'd hope things wouldn't get worse. But of course they do. Velita gets distracted by her squirrel, whose name is Squit, and fails to be the proper lookout. They almost fall to the commissioner again, and only escapes him and his ship by basically destroying their own. Big oops. Big oops. With the Stone Cloud's sailworthiness almost completely compromised, they limp into the Silk Reef. Adam, Aren, Velita, and the rest of them are supposed to remain with the ship and try to fix it, while Senlin and Edith take the books to Marat and ask for his help. Not that Velita obeys, though that does turn out to be for the best. While Adam and Aren piece the ship back together, Velita follows her captain and first mate through the Silk Reef's forest to Marat's headquarters at the Golden Zoo, where they meet with Marat but don't really like what they see or hear. Marat is handsome and eloquent, but wheelchair-bound, as his legs were replaced by the Sphinx, who he refuses to work for, which means he can no longer get the vials needed to power them. Meanwhile, the Hods he is rescuing seem to be doing well, but Senlin doesn't care for the fact that he will have to become a Hod and agree to help Marat's cause in order to use the Black Trail to get into Pelphia. On top of that, the books Marat is collecting are being destroyed, as the Hods work back to front and black out every single line.
Thankfully, Velita is able to help Senlin and Edith escape, who their visit is not without its consequences. Edith lost all of the vials that power her arm in the fight against the Commissioner, and she uses the last of its power during their fight with Marat and the Hods. In an uncharacteristic stroke of good luck, though, Aren and Adam have made the Stone Cloud airworthy once again, at least enough to escape from the Silk Reef. But they know they won't last long, and poor Edith is a mess over her now useless arm, so Senlin dons his captain's hat and decides that he will pay a visit to the legendary Sphinx.
Sorry, I was trying to work on sharing our Facebook post about this episode, and I muted myself because it often will start playing automatically. Yes, so much happening in the first two parts of this book. It's it's not necessarily action-packed per se, at least not up until they're there's like a couple little, instances when they meet with the commissioner, and then when they're trying to escape from Marat. But it's more, I think the first two parts of this book are more about just kind of a lot of world building and also, introducing random new characters that who knows if we'll ever actually see again. I really enjoyed Madame Bata. She is a very interesting inclusion. The fact that she lives in a spider web of yarn underneath her son's shop, and she's a person, but I don't know how she lives down there, because of course Senlin goes to meet her and he's struggling through the yarn web trying to get to her, and he sees that there's all these hats that were left behind, and that means that the people clearly fell to their death, apparently for lying to her. So, but I really love that whole scene because of what she says to him about history. And I don't know, was it clear to you guys, because even reading it, this is, I think, the third time I've read this book, and even reading it again, I'm not sure that I'm not sure how I feel. Is she recording everything that happens in the tower, or is it still just select things? Because I feel like if she knows every single thing that's going on, that's just so much.
Yeah, it does. It is implied that she knows everything because she mentions things that she has no way she wasn't there, so she doesn't know that it happened, but she still knows about it.
The question is how.
Yeah.
Is it magical? Does she have a recorder of some type?
Yeah, I don't know. That part I definitely don't know.
Yeah, it's very yeah.
I agree with Nick that she's recording everything, but the question becomes how, and will we ever learn, or is it just a convenient plot device to move the plot forward?
Well, and it's also very interesting that she is that she's just, she says it several times, like, I am a recorder. Like she takes down the history, or sorry, she doesn't like that word. She doesn't like the history or historian words. She is the recorder of all things that happen in the tower, but she doesn't do anything about it. I mean, it doesn't even sound like she, even when crazy things happen, she's not going to get help for people or anything like that. She is literally just marking it on, with her knots and everything. And also it reminded me of, oh my gosh, what was the Daevabad trilogy? Was it Daevabad trilogy where they were recording things by tying them on lines?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I was that, that's a nice little reminder of a series that we read last season. I'm pretty sure it was Daevabad. So it's been so long. There were so many books last season, like 15 books in a 9-month period or something, or 6-month period. It was not, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and I also loved, I mentioned that Madame Bata hates the word history and historian, and I loved the passion that she has when she talks about it. Senlin says that he taught this, and this, and one of the things he says is that he taught history, and she asks, which history? And he says, well, you're a historian of sorts, and she vehemently disagrees. That's what she says, she's a recorder. And I wanted to quote her because it's just such a good, 2 pages long passage or back and forth between the two of them. She says, a recorder takes things down. A historian makes things up. A historian begins with an ending, and then he concocts a pleasing cause. It's a fairy tale. And Senlin argues there are small omissions, but that the story isn't perverted. It's just clarified. And she insists, of course it's clarified. That's because all of the confusing and muddling and disagreeing parts have been removed. It's clear because it's untrue. Who are these pious men writing the story of time anyway? To whom are they devoted? Every historian I've ever heard of has a benefactor or a master or a duty to his country. History is a love letter to tyrants written in the blood of the overrun, the forgotten, the expunged. And just considering everything that's going on in the world right now, I was like, this hit. Those couple pages hit a lot harder than they did the first, the second time I read them, which was like 2.5 years ago. But I don't know. Do you guys think we'll see Madame Bata again? Do you think she's just a one-off kind of plot device?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't know why. The only other reason I could think of keeping her around is, again, to get more information. They can just keep stopping in to get more information,
which they can't do apparently, because
what?
Which they can't just stop in. They can't stop in there anymore. They can't go to Windsock anymore. They've been banned from the one port where they were able to rest. Which
well, I'm getting ahead of myself, I guess, because of not
really.
I guess you are.
Yeah, no, because I was going to say with what happened later in the book, there's
none of that.
I don't think that's true anymore.
Some of us have not read past where.
That's why I said I gotta stop.
I mean, really, as far as I know, they're banned for good. I mean, because that's the thing about Windsock is nobody. It is a pirate port. You know what I mean? It's like being banned. It's like being banned from Tortuga in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Or NASA and Black Sails.
Yeah, what do they call it? They call it a black scotch, which is a really. I didn't look up that term to see if there's any historical meaning behind it. And now I feel like I should have, because I'm not sure if it's just a reference to liquor, like the tower uses scotch instead of rum. They don't though, because they steal. I don't know. I feel like I should have looked up the term black scotch. It's a very weird term to me, but I love. I mean, I hate that they got banned from the port, but the whole like how it happens is just this weird little comedy of errors, right? Like Adam and Iron are just hanging out in the pub, and Velita comes back and is like, "Oh, I stole a squirrel."
Oh, Velita.
She's very willful. I love her. I love how much more we're seeing of her.
Yeah. She's great. I love her little squirrel too.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Squid. It reminds me of back in the day for a hot minute when I had, oh my gosh, not flying squirrels, sugar gliders.
What are sugar gliders?
They're marsupial. They're like flying squirrels. In that they glide like they do, and they look kind of like them, but a little bit smaller and slightly cuter faces. But they're marsupials. They're an exotic pet, so they're banned in a lot of places. Like if I had them still now, I wouldn't have been able to bring them to California, but I don't think. But they're cute little pets, but they supposedly will bond with a person. And I mean, to bring it back to Velita, this squirrel apparently is immediately just like her BFF, which is so cute. But apparently sugar gliders bond with people, but I only was fostering mine. I didn't have them long enough to bond with them. I was basically like I got them from a breeder who was kind of overrun, and I kept them for about 8 months, maybe longer than I expected to. They're cute and everything, and mine were pretty friendly, but this is a total random aside, I know, but like whenever I picture Squid, I know that Squid is a flying squirrel, but I actually picture my sugar gliders. Their names were Maya and Tia, and it reminded me of like whenever Squid's like getting up and like making this little, like Julita's talking about him or her making their little chirping noises and everything. It reminded me of the time that one of them I think it was Tia, got out of her cage in the middle of the night, and I got woken up by a ruckus because she had made it down from the upstairs bedroom down into our dining room, and my cat had kind of started going after her, and she was standing on one of the dining room chairs with her little glider things all spread out like at my cat, and he was freaking out. And I just picture Squid being like anytime somebody like gets in Velita's face or whatever, she don't need Iron anymore. She's got Squid now to protect her. Anyway, totally random aside. So despite the fact that Velita's the one that steals the squirrel, it's Iron that gets them in real trouble, though.
Yep.
Because she just murders somebody without thinking.
She just straight up kills somebody.
I mean, did she really mean to just straight up murder him? I think she just kind of threw him. I don't think she was thinking about what she was doing or where he was going to go. The fact that there's no walls in this pub, it's just blankets or sheets or whatever they like silk. I think it's like silk curtains or something everywhere. So she just throws him through the silk curtains, you know? But wow, Iron and Belita, what a pair.
They really are.
Yeah, I don't think she didn't not want to kill him either.
No, probably not.
I think she was just, angry and frustrated about life and had an opportunity.
Well, she's very protective of Velita, so
Yeah, for sure. Which is an interesting, because Velita used to just be afraid of her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like buddy, and also Iron and Adam eventually become buddy. That's in part two, sort of, is when their friendship kicks out.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, part one is kind of, other than, I will say the destruction of the ship
mm-hmm.
is certainly a. I know that they had no choice, right? Of course they had no choice. But, twice in a row, Velita. Twice in a row.
Oof.
You're not doing too hot here, girl.
No, not a good record.
And I still am like shocked that they didn't crash the ship entirely, right?
Honestly, yeah.
I just, yeah. I mean, they didn't. They escaped the commissioner by the skin of their teeth, and did not crash the ship. And that was right after they had gotten the books from the weird, like, I can't remember how
the family, the dad and the daughter.
Yeah, they stole the book.
Right. Well, they stole a whole bunch of books. But I was trying to remember what their airship, quote unquote, looked like, because Senlin was describing. I had forgotten this, right? I'd forgotten this about the airships, that a lot of the people who are tourists, they don't actually have airships. They just make their homes into airships or something. It's like this weird sort of houseboat situation, but not quite that. Not quite that houseboaty. I don't know. I just, because the way that this guy and his daughter, their quote unquote airship is described, is that it's like this little, I think it's like a little house, like a little Victorian tea house or something, or English tea house is what I kind of picture. And I could be misremembering the exact description a little bit, but how the hell does that thing fly? How do any of these fly? I don't care how big your envelope is.
How do the once every 10-year idiots who strap a bunch of helium balloons to chairs fly? I mean, it's not like you have to be. It's not like you have to be aerodynamic if you put a big enough balloon of air above, or I should say hot gas above you.
I wonder if Josiah Bancroft was inspired, let's say, by Up when he was
maybe
describing these, right? I mean,
maybe, yeah.
That I actually have interviewed him twice. I think it was years ago, about Senlin Ascends and Arm of the Sphinx. And I think if I could ask him one question now, that would be like the first one on my mind. Were you inspired by Up when you were describing these like floating, tourist houses? They're just going to the tower instead of the falls. Also that guy and his daughter, that was weird though.
Yeah, it was.
Because does someone call her Edith maybe, and like says, like, thinks she's his wife, and he's like, ew, no, that's my daughter. But still the whole thing just seems very weird. And then there's also that little aside when they're being attacked by the commissioner's ship with the ornithologist from, is he from Pelthia? I think he's from Pelthia, and he's like creeping on the maid or whatever she is, and I don't know, that the whole thing is very, it seems kind of out of place and unnecessary, which I normally don't say about these books, but why did we need that perspective? Like, why did we need this side? I feel like that would be a good like side tale, like for an author to put on their website. You know what I mean? Like the attack from another view sort of thing. It just felt a little, I don't know. What do you guys think? Did it feel out of place to you? Am I alone in that?
No, it felt a little out of place to me too.
I'll be honest, I didn't notice.
Well, anyway, so they go.
So I actually have a question on the strat and what one of the things that concerned them. I'm still. They didn't want to land because they felt they'd be overrun by the mob. Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
If they landed, they'd be basically overrun by all the tourists, and that's why they just couldn't land and try to escape in the huge crowd of hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, I think it was also Senlin knew that if they did land, they'd have like little to no control over it. So it would be a crash landing, and between that and the fact that yes, they would be kind of overrun by the people in the skirts or in the marketplace or whatever, there wouldn't be. It's like maybe they would escape, but then where would they go after that? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, he still has his train ticket, as far as I know.
I think that at this point, he's not leaving Mario.
Also, he specifically said it's only good for a certain amount of time.
I missed that,
which is almost certainly past at this point. Because that was one of the things that came up towards the beginning of the book. He was trying to figure out what to do about Maria. Was that the train tickets would only last for so long?
It's like flying Frontier Airlines.
Yeah.
Someone had the Frontier Airlines ticket, not the first class Delta or Southwest ticket.
Yeah, non-refundable.
He didn't have an NFT for the train.
Oh God.
Current event mention. Okay, so they escape from the commissioner just barely, and next up is like part 2 is where all the kind of meat of the first half of this book really happens, because they go to the Silk Gardens or Silk Reef. It was called I know that the part is called the Golden Zoo, which is the center of that ringdom, and I think in the map it's called the Silk Reef, but they also talk about the gardens constantly because it's sort of a garden. There's these creepy brittle trees that when you break them, they have no leaves, and when you break them, they're all sharp and weird. I mean, they have no natural light or anything, so it makes sense that they're not trees like we would think of them in a forest or whatever. But so they limp in there and land the ship, and it's a lot of back and forth between Senlin and Edith going to Marat, and Valida following them, and Iron and Adam trying to put the ship back together. And this is when Iron and Adam kind of forge their little friendship. But
yeah,
were either of you, because reading it, even rereading it this time, because it had been a while, I didn't have like a sense of urgency really. You find out later that the ships, the wrecks that are there in the the beach sort of thing at the entrance to the Silk Reef have all been picked through, but I didn't feel like any sort of like urgency about that. Of course they've been picked through by the people who live here, and we should probably be worried about that. It really wasn't until it gets told to us later in part 2 that they wait until the people who land the ship have become complacent, and then they go after them and steal everything they can. But I wasn't feeling that sort of concern when they landed. And maybe it's because when Madame Bata was describing Marat, she was very vague, but she shouldn't make him sound like he was necessarily super dangerous or whatever.
Right.
So I don't know. Did either of you get this, like, oh shoot, they're landing here and they shouldn't be feeling, or was it just kind of like, oh, they're gonna go get help now because Marat is of course gonna help them because he's a good guy, right? That's what Senlin believes anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it struck me as odd that they just kind of didn't pay attention to that.
I guess, it wasn't they didn't pay attention. It was mostly they didn't question it. They didn't question the fact that these ships were all picked clean. Like at the very least, oh, okay, so somebody cleaned them out, but maybe it was the ship that came before or came after them, or maybe it's very. And I know there's no one there when they land, but still. And how far they go? Pretty far. Senlin and Edith go pretty far into the forest before they do run into that one Hod who is speaking their weird, mumbly nonsense language.
Hodish.
Yeah. Which makes sense, obviously, that they made up their own. It's like kids in a school making up their own, or sisters making up their own language so that they can babble about things, and the parents or the school teachers won't, understand what they're saying, right? Keeping their secrets or whatever. And the Hods live a kind of dangerous life, obviously, so it makes sense that they would have this. But the fact that they speak it even in a place where they're free is interesting. Or free, I don't know. Thoughts? You're muted, Nick.
Well, no. There we go. It's odd that they use the language even when there aren't outsiders around, but it seems like they've essentially gotten to a point where they don't really speak anything else. Because even like the few times, aside from Marat, the few times when somebody speaks something other than Hodish, it's like one sentence and then they go back to Hodish.
Yeah, they just say it's like come and be free, I think, or something very similar to that. And it's so Velita immediately distrusts this guy, this Hod, that she's following. She was supposed to stay back with Adam and Iron, and she does her Velita thing, and for once it actually turns out for the best. But when she's following them and they run into this Hod, they're kind of just trusting of him. Even Edith seems more trusting than I would expect of her at this point, I think. But
I don't know. She didn't really come across as trusting, though. She was pissed at him from the beginning.
Maybe trusting isn't the right word, but it's certainly, they just kind of follow him without really questioning it. Even Edith at this point has been pissy enough with Senlin that I think.
Wait, but weren't they following him because weren't they having issues with the spiders before?
Yeah, they got. The spiders ran. It wasn't really the spiders, I guess, that they had to be worried about. Though, of course, I get being freaked out that a billion spiders, are suddenly swarming you. But the spiders were just running. It was the spider eaters that are really the problem.
Yep.
And I'm still that was one of the things I wanted to just touch on, because the spiders I get, right? It's a silk reef. They have something to do with the production of the silk, which isn't how silk is produced in real life. But okay, let's say that the spiders produce the silk because that's what the book tells us. But I get them. I get the spiders, but the spider eaters seem like a lot. Why are there so many of them, and why are they so? Why do they exist? Wouldn't you want the spiders to kind of just do their thing? And also, maybe the spider eaters weren't always there, but it seems like an odd inclusion in a place that's literally built for lovers' trysts.
It does seem odd.
So you go out to have your little fling in the creepy, weird forest, because there's all these little coves and places to hide behind to do the things. And
well, I don't think that happened before. I think the spiders and those things, I think, came after, right? I mean, were they there when this was a civilized tourist attraction?
I believe so.
I thought so.
But they were
but they probably would have been in a much more controlled environment.
Right. And it's been a long time, and so they've been breeding, and there's a ton of spiders. But if nobody ever goes to the Silk Reef, then why put this now? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're dangerous to have when it's a tourist attraction, the spider eaters, I mean. And also I would assume that I would assume that they are controlling the spiders in a safer way when it's a tourist attraction. That it's not a tourist attraction and nobody's supposed to be going there at all, other than the few ships that crash there or whatever. And these spider eaters, so somebody put them there. I get that, but when exactly? Like, have they always been there? Were they also controlled? It's a very weird. It's just a very weird kind of, and they also feel like a plot device, I guess, just to get Senlin and Edith to have to dive into the water, and then the Hog comes upon them, and then later when they're trying to escape, they use the spider eaters to help them escape. A spider eater coming up on the ship graveyard and attacking Iron and Adam is what leads to them kind of forming a more friendshipy bond than they had previously, etc. But it just seems like a lot. These spider eaters are very, I mean, another plot device. And I would love to, maybe eventually we'll get more information on the whys and hows of them. Yeah, for now, they just seem like a really odd, how did they get there and why sort of thing.
I must admit, all I saw was gigantic anteaters with sharp claws.
Yep. Well, anteaters have huge claws.
I know, but for some reason are more aggressive. That's what I was thinking, but bigger than even an anteater. Anteaters are pretty big, actually. But
just to shove in another mention of a series that we've read, they're like the bunyips from Temeraire. Anyway, so yeah, it's probably a weird thing it's probably a weird me thing that I want to know more about why and how these spider eaters are there and how they exist to the extent they exist. But for now, I guess it's neither here nor there. What they do in Arm of the Sphinx is further the plot bit by bit by causing Senlin and Edith to dive into the pond, or the I guess more like a cistern than a pond, and then again, like I said, the spider eater attacking Iron and Adam leads to them becoming better friends because Adam helps her, and then later Senlin and Edith use the spider eaters to escape from the Hods. So it's a lot of plot devicey stuff. But anyway, they're not super important. The really big important thing that happens in the entire first half of this book, I mean, there's some interesting. I still love the Madame Bata thing. I really want to know more about that. I hope it comes back again. He comes back again, but the big thing,
Hod Revolution.
Yeah, we learn about the Hod Revolution. There is one more kind of big revelation at the end of part 2, but the biggest plot, point in the first half of this book is Luke Marat and his Hods and the blacking out of the books. And I mean, just so it's a lot packed in to really, when you think about it, when you break out the parts where Adam and Iron are fixing the ship and everything, it's packed into very few pages where, Edith and Senlin meet with Marat and, and of course then Valida also from her point of view sees the Hods. And that's probably, Edith and Senlin, they don't trust Marat. Senlin is like, this guy is real smooth, but I don't know about him. And then he finds out about the blacking out of the books and he's like, whoa, teacher vibe, no. So, but Valida seeing them, before we dig too deep into Marat himself, because I do want to talk about that, Valida seeing the Hods, there's the two Hods that have the third one that they've taken from the Black Trail. He's got a keg of gunpowder and they want the gunpowder and they're like, come and be free, come and be free. And the guy's like, no, man, I got like 4 months left. I'm almost done. I the light at the end of the tunnel. I just want to finish out my work. It's not that bad. I just want to get out of here. And they're like, okay, bop him on the back of the head, bury him under the grass. And Valida is like, how many bodies are buried under here? Like, that is so... it speaks a lot to this so-called revolution, and
yep,
they're not really out to help all the Hods and everything. I don't know. Like, did you guys have any?
I mean, it's like every revolution. You're either with us or you're against us, and therefore the person who's not with you is against you. So therefore, you can knock them off.
I guess it just seems like. And also, man, maybe that guy's kind of stupid too, Like, I don't know. We know, I think we know enough about this situation with the Hods, right? To know they're indentured servants. So like indentured servants, they're as much as they work off their bill, there's going to be stuff constantly added to it, right?
No. Well, yes, depending on where and when the indenture, but a lot of indentures, some indentures, that's definitely true. Others was not. I mean, one of the reasons people came to the United States was to be indentured, and then they eventually settled in the United States. I mean
eventually.
So it may have been, in his case, it was reasonable, or he may have been lied to and just believed it because he wanted to believe it. But it's possible it could have gone either way.
I mean, I guess I'm erring on the side of Tower bad, all things about Tower bad. So my thought process there is, they're like, I'm feeling this is the bad indentured servitude, right? Where
I would have assumed that too, but
where they work and work and work, but like this guy's thinking he's going to get out of there in 4 months. Something's going to go wrong. There's no guarantee of that. There really isn't. Something could go wrong. Something probably is going to go wrong. He's going to,
he ran into Moret's people.
Right. But I mean, even outside of that, like something else would have gone wrong if that didn't, is kind of my thought process. So, but now he's buried under the sod in the Golden Zoo. I'm with Valida, man. I'm like, how many people are buried under there? And also, how is that? How is it not stinky or anything?
Yeah, that's weird.
Even if that only happens once in a while, like let's say once a month, that place should reek. There's no way. There's just no way. I don't know.
Well, you assume that the spider eaters don't eat the bodies too, right?
I don't think the spider eaters go into that area, but I suppose there could be something like some sort of preservative or something down in there, and they've made it so that it can be like a graveyard without it. I don't know. Whatever. I guess it doesn't matter either way. Yeah. It just was like, ugh.
Or maybe they don't have to. Well, the other possibility is they don't have to kill that many people.
True.
I mean, Valida thought how many bodies are there, but it may have been one. This one.
I would hazard to guess it happens fairly regularly because it's pretty. They have a system. They have a system, man, and they work it pretty quickly when they kill this guy. They're like, bop, pick up the sod,
Yep.
throw them in, put it back down.
Yeah.
It's too smooth for them to. But okay, so on to, the big important plot things that we learn, starting with Marat. So, thoughts on his Hod revolution and the blacking out of the books? Go. Someone other than me, because I've been talking too much.
I still wasn't 100% certain why he was black, why one had to do with the other. The Hod revolution part I got, I didn't quite get the whole blocking out of the books. I mean,
well, it's to keep them ignorant.
Yeah, but the Hods in general aren't ignorant people.
Yeah, you have
right?
to. I mean, you have to imagine some of them can read and everything. They're not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not. It's the Hods. It's one thing to keep people ignorant who were start off ignorant, but the Hods mostly came from, I would say, some set of means that they ran into trouble because they could afford to get to the tower. So there were a lot of educated Hods. So I just don't see it. Didn't
I mean, Tarot is a perfect example, right?
Yeah, and I would.
Right, they might have started out that way, but if you spend a significant amount of time being forced to do only that kind of labor, I'm not sure how much of that you retain.
You think you forget how to read?
Not necessarily forget how to read, but like the other thing is it correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think books are like a plentiful thing in this world.
Well, they're not
like
not good ones anyway.
Well, they're not unplentiful. I mean, Senlin wasn't exactly a wealthy guy. He was a school teacher in a small little village who was teaching his, the children under him to read. So it's not like they didn't have any books at all.
I think that using Senlin as an example is not. It's not the best. He's not the best example of the world as a whole because he is a teacher, right? I mean, and the guy that they steal the books from, also not the best example because he's, I think, a professor, is what he says, or something along those lines, right? So but even then, I guess we also don't know, are they blacking out all books or are they only blacking out books about the tower? Because in Senlin Ascends, the book that's being blacked out is that wifemonger guide thing. And pretty much all the books Senlin brings with him to give to Marat this time are books
about the tower. That's
about the tower. So you don't know for sure if it's all books or if it's just those. But then it's like Marat wants to destroy the tower, right? He wants to destroy that.
Or take over the tower, one or the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would err on the side of destroy it, not necessarily like collapse it physically, but he wants to destroy the lifestyle that it. Yeah, he wants to destroy everything it represents for sure.
Yeah, he's Daenerys. He wants to break the wheel.
Yeah. And so and honestly, also in that respect, it's like I can't necessarily disagree with them destroying the books about the tower that draw people to it with half-truths, and sometimes outright lies. But also it's like it's still censorship. It's still, their version of book burning, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Why not just burn them? What's the point of spending all that time?
It keeps them busy. It gives them something to do. It's like a meditative thing, I think, is what I got from it. Like they they clearly have work to do, right? But it's also, I think Marat doesn't want them to have, the Hads to have too much downtime, because with too much downtime, they might start thinking about life outside of this, right? At least that was my take on it. And that might be completely off base. I honestly don't know, but that was my take on it. He wants to systemically like destroy all this literature, if you want to call it literature. Bad guidebooks is bad guidebooks and books about stealing women. I mean, it's like I'm trying to think of real world examples, you know.
Is it about stealing women or white slaving women? I guess they're one and the same.
Yeah, it's both. It's one and the same in that book. But I'm trying to think of real world examples, and it's like, I don't know, like blacking out like Mein Kampf or something. I don't know. That's not a good example. And also, I'm of the opinion that there should always be like these books should be kept, because if you don't, destroying stuff like that doesn't get rid of the ideas, right? It just gets rid of the bad example of it, maybe. I don't know. It's very but all that said, so Marat himself, he's this very eloquent, attractive, you know, Senlin mentioned several times how, you know, he's this kind of good looking, well-spoken man. And he's also, like Edith, what we learned is called a wakeman. Mm-hmm. They were modified by the Sphinx, and in return, they agree, they have a contract to help protect the tower. But Marat has given that up. He didn't like being party to that. He didn't like being in the Sphinx's employ. I'm using that term very loosely because it really is another form of indentured servitude. The difference being they're not walking the black trail with, you know, loads on their back, paying off a debt. They get, you know, Edith got her arm, Marat got his legs, and, you know, he's in his wheelchair because he doesn't have the batteries for his legs. One thing I will say, did anybody else, and I don't think I really thought about it the first 2 times I read this book, oddly enough, but this time, maybe it's 3rd time's the charm. Did anybody think anything of Senlin makes a couple comments about the sounds of the wheelchair and how it's like kind of musical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I thought that was really interesting.
Because the first time I was like, I thought he just meant the creaks of the chair were not necessarily musical, but, you know, it's just that sound was, or I don't know, it was something about the sound, and sure, he pointed it out, but then later, for sure, he mentions like the musical sound, and he knew it was Marat, and I'm like, okay, wait, so is it an actual musical sound, or is it just the rhythmic?
No, it sounded like it was like a musical series of notes that the wheelchair plays.
Okay, so and that's what I was wondering, you know, because again, like I said, at first it just sounds like it's maybe the rhythmic creaking of the wheelchair, but then later he referred, I think at least twice, he refers to it as like a musical sound, and it's like, wait a minute, so is it actually playing music? Is it actually making a sound like that?
I think so.
Sort of like, it's like Jaws. That's the sound of Marat.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the fact that they flee. Well, the fact that they flee and somehow Marat catches up to them in his wheelchair is really interesting to me, because no matter how they're, you know, forcing their way through the thickets of the weird forest, I'm still just kind of, you know, Velita comes to rescue them. Like I said, you know, good thing Velita finally did something, but Velita not obeying finally made a difference.
Redeemed.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Adam explored and found the equipment to fix the ship to a certain degree.
And a gold bar and
a
diary.
gold bar.
And a diary talking about the riches of the tower,
The roof.
Adam and his treasure hunter self. It's all, that's all very, like, it's this weird little side plot that is like, oh, Adam, just stop, please. Just stop.
The real friendships are the treasures we found along the way.
But so Velita follows them, and she realizes, because they realize, okay, we're not locked in this room in the zoo, in the bird cage thing, but we're clearly not meant to be able to leave. And Velita recognizes that as well. Mm-hmm. And she saw the whole thing where they took the gunpowder from the hod, and she rigs an explosion to cause a distraction so that they can escape. And it's just very, like, I don't know how did the explosion happen and the distraction happens, and somehow, and they flee through the woods, and Edith, even though they're, like I said, running through the thicket, and Edith is using her arm as, a sort of a battering ram in a way. But still, like, Marat in his wheelchair catches up with him. That's interesting to me. Like, to me, it read that there's something beyond. There's no way he's just slowly creaking along in his wheelchair. There has to be something else about that wheelchair. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys?
No, I agree.
I think you're overthinking it. I think it just was a convenient plot device.
Maybe.
I might be wrong, but
maybe. But there's some weird sort of technology in this tower.
No, if he had the fuel, I would say yes. But without the fuel.
Well, he doesn't have the batteries for his legs. That doesn't mean he doesn't have anything to, I don't know, help him move faster. I guess it doesn't matter. I think it's just he needed to catch up with them so that there could be that last sort of standoff where Senlin, is that where he shows him? Because he sees when they're in the zoo, this is important, he sees that Ogier has 5 copies of Ogier's painting.
Yeah, 5 fakes.
So he sees that there's 5 copies of the painting in the zoo, and it's then, right, when they face Marat in that clearing when they're trying to escape, that he pulls it out and says, "Ha ha, I have this." And that's when Marat is like, "Shoot them!" Even though the spider eaters are right there. He gets real mad. He gets real mad.
He loses his shit for a second, let's be real. Yeah, he freaks out about it, for sure.
Everybody is obsessed with this painting. And someone's over here just like, I got this painting. What? I don't know. It's very that painting. I know that it's important. We all know that it's important, but it just, at this point, it's still just like, why? It's just a painting of a little girl.
Yeah, at this point, it's purely a MacGuffin.
Yeah. But for some reason, Marat has 5 copies of it and is real mad that Senlin has another one. The real one, really. I don't know. Yes,
I know that it's the real one.
I don't think Marat.
We've been told it's the real one. There's no proof it's the real one. For all we know, it's a fake one.
That's true.
Especially when there are now 6 of them, or 7 of them, because Senlin had the other fake,
including the Senlin.
Yeah, the Senlin fake. So there's 7 of these paintings out there.
But yeah, but it makes Marat lose his shit, and I'm really like, come on, man, you're stupid. Why would you do that? Like, just, the spider eaters are right there. He knows they're there too, like, he thinks he's got them cornered. Then it's like, oh wait, you have a painting? Never mind.
Yep.
And then there's the scene where the sort of Hod army is approaching the stone cloud, and Iron and Adam are trying to hold them off, but they've only got a few guns. a few shots, whatever.
Mhm.
And that was a very interesting sort of interlude, I think, to see inside the Hod's mind. It's like, oh, he gets to the boat and he looks around and he realizes, shit, I'm the only one left because Senlin and Edith are taking them out from behind.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah, it was a really good little, like I said, like interlude, right? Just
Mhm.
I don't know if we'll ever see into the Hod's minds again, but yeah.
You kind of feel bad for that one Hod who's just like, wait, what?
Sorry, I had to sneeze.
You mean the last Hod, the one that was
Yeah, the
left
last
alone?
one who's like, wait a second.
Yeah, I mean, well, that scene sort of bothered me because they were really dumb that they, all of a
The
sudden
last
they're all
Hod
dead.
standing.
I mean, none of them picked up on it except the last one. That seems a bit extreme. But
I mean, I think they were all just of one mind, right? And they're so used to not having any sort of, they're so used to these people not being prepared, maybe not having any way to fight them. Or if they do, they're so unprepared that they can't handle this sort of mini army of Hods that's approaching them from that they didn't even know was there in the first place. So I don't, yeah, I mean, but yeah, that whole interlude was really funny. And I still, the fact that they were able to repair the ship and get out of there was like, okay, all right. They had to, obviously they had to escape, but they all get out and and the other thing is Velita shaved her head so that she'd look like a Hod, which was,
oh yeah, that was nuts.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Like, and now she just is gonna look like a Hod for a while, maybe forever. She seems to like not having her hair.
Yeah, the fact that she was just kind of like giddy about it too was pretty great.
Well, I think I think this is from the first half of the book. If it's not a huge spoiler, but there's some parts where Velita is thinking about her time at Rodian's, when she was doing her show for Rodian and everything. And she is, I mean, clearly traumatized, even though she doesn't necessarily portray that often, her inner thoughts where she, at one point, she thinks about how Rodian would come in and
play with her hair, or didn't it? Wasn't it?
He was a voyeur.
But wasn't he also playing with her hair?
There was a lot of gross. There was a lot of gross there, and you know how he would say things like, "Maybe I won't sell you. I'll just keep you for myself." But he was also he was doing real gross, dirty things, like in her room, and she was sleeping and stuff, and. So I think that her shaving her head and why she's so giddy about it it has a lot to do with that. It's like her taking off her leotard and wearing just boxy shirt and big manly gloves, that she's hiding the things and getting rid of the things about her that were part of the identity that caused her to be traumatized, let's be real. So at least in her mind. But yeah. So it's one of those sort of empowering, maybe she'll grow her hair back a little bit, but the fact that she's just like, well, I gotta be a Hod, so just shaving her head, hair it off, no big deal.
Yep. I liked it.
Now, okay, so closing out part 2 is we know for sure now why and how Edith and the Red Hand are siblings. And Marat, he's given up that life as a wakeman, but he's still part of that as well because he still has the legs. He can't get rid of those, I guess. Right. I mean, that I mean, Edith's arm at the end of part 2 is useless. So she doesn't. She lost all of her batteries, and then the last one she had in the arm was used up in the escape. So, she admits to Senlin. He asks her why she wouldn't talk about what happened to her, why she wouldn't tell him about the Sphinx, and she I love that she says that's a big knock, because earlier in the book they had this system of knocks because her cabin, she had to walk through his to get to her cabin, so they had this stupid system of knocks that he came up with and that she kind of thought was dumb, but she went along with, and I love that she was like, that's a big knock, Tom, when he says, like, why won't you tell me about these things? But she said, she says she's avoided talking about it because she didn't want him to look at her differently, and she didn't want to feel less like herself than she already did. But she tells him about the whole deal with the Sphinx. Like, I was dying. I was going to lose my arm and probably my life. And I was brought to the Sphinx, and I signed away myself in return for this arm. And now it's useless until or unless I can get more batteries. And, and she thinks of the Sphinx as sort of like her own bully. Like, she doesn't trust him. She doesn't like him. But Senlin's like, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, man. Like, what are you gonna do? Walk around with your arm, like holding your dead 100-pound arm up? I don't know how heavy this thing is, but it's clearly very heavy, because when she loses the battery, she slumps off to one side. Yeah. It makes her completely off balance. So, she doesn't want to go see the Sphinx, but Senlin's like, I don't think we have a choice. Right?
Well, they also had a ship that was falling apart. They couldn't do much with the ship. I mean, at this point, it's between Edith and the lack of a ship that may or may not fly more than another few days.
That they don't have much food.
They didn't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
But it's still, Edith's over here like, I still don't know. I still don't think we should do this. I still don't like what we're doing here.
Yep.
So it's going to be very interesting in part 3, when we have to assume they will at least go to the Sphinx's lair, because they don't have a choice. We don't know at this point how they're going to get there. The ship is airworthy enough to get them there, but I think that Edith does tell Senlin that Billy Lee, the pirate that was killed at the end of the last book, the one that was the original captain of the Stone Cloud, he's the one that found her and brought her to the Sphinx, right? Yep. So he finds people and brings them to the Sphinx. So they know enough that they think they can get and gain entrance. And that's kind of where we leave it. But I mean, we talked about in our last episode, when Edith is holding the red hand out and he's calling her sister, and it's like, well, clearly there's a tie between them because he's running on the same stuff that her arm is running on. Like, we know that much at least. But now we know there's a whole set of these people who have been modified, let's say, by the Sphinx, and they're called Wake Men, and they are supposed to protect the tower. So it's very interesting that the Red Hand was kind of unhinged the way he was, and also like it begs the question. Edith was just on the Stone Cloud, kind of being a pirate. She wasn't really doing anything for the tower. Hasn't been doing anything for the tower. So
right.
Apparently it's not.
Yes, she was, because they were recruiting people for the thing.
But she specifically says that she hasn't been called in.
Yeah.
Like, she's waiting for him to call her dead in.
Yeah.
But
he also placed her on a ship that's doing his bidding. But
it's not like the Red Hand where she's been tasked the same way.
So,
And it also feels, I mean, because the Red Hand was put in the service of the commissioner, and he's apparently just supposed to do whatever the commissioner says, whether or not it seems right. So that it's I think there's a very interesting level of like, how much control does the Sphinx actually have once he sends these people out to like hires them out to these people, or had the Red Hand gone rogue? I mean, I guess apparently not, because he wouldn't have been receiving his batteries or whatever they are. So yeah,
but you may already had them. I mean, how long a supply are they sent out?
I think it was like a year. I think Edith mentions that she was like what she lost from what she lost when her cabin was torn out and all of her vials were like literally just tossed out of the ship. I think it was a year. So, that's not to say that the Sphinx can call your contract in and say, you got to go serve this person or do this thing at any time. But my question is more, why was like, is the Sphinx in hand with the commissioner? Because the Red Hand was clearly doing what he was supposed to do based on what the commissioner was saying. And I don't want to get too deep in this because I don't want anything to be spoiled by people who have already read these books, me, or who, Jonathan. But yeah, I think it's very, I even having read them, I still am just, the Red Hand is a very weird, intriguing situation, I think. And I wonder how much of who he is and what he's been doing is actually what he was supposed to be doing.
So I'm curious, because it's too late for me because I've been ruined because I've read ahead. And Tara also. Nick, where do you think the Sphinx's game is?
I think that the tower provides everything the Sphinx needs, so the Sphinx's only function ultimately is to keep the tower going.
I mean, makes sense. Like, I guess at this point, the tower only serves itself, right? Mm-hmm. So the Sphinx being served by the tower is it's a very depressing world, the tower.
It is.
The rest of the world.
Are you saying you would not leave sunny California for this tower?
I would not leave. I grew up in New England, man. I would not leave gross, snowy, cold New England for this tower. Literally any part of it. Some parts of this world as a whole don't seem so bad. It kind of makes me wonder, like, why? Well, I guess it's the guidebooks, all of the guidebooks that exist for the tower, because the Everman's Guide is the main one, but there clearly are other histories and everything that exists as we learn. So, it makes me wonder, like, how bad are these people's lives that they're just pulling up their houses, like they're carling their houses to float over to the tower. Well, this isn't a natural wonder of the world, right?
Well, I think of it as more like the wonder of America, right? I mean, you're picking up people who dream of a better life, and they've heard these things about the tower. They heard these things about America, so they came to America in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. Philosophically, I think it's the same goal. The problem is the tower is not quite as friendly as America is.
The idea that America is friendly to all immigrants is pretty hilarious.
I didn't say was friendly. I never was friendly to all immigrants, but it did and still does provide opportunity that other countries don't have, as flawed as we are. And there's no question if, for certain groups, it's been a lot better than others. But
yeah, I honestly, I think that's, I actually do think that's a good, metaphor for the tower, but because America being like this land of plenty and opportunity, sure, it was true for a lot of people, but the vast majority of people came here and not so much. I mean, even outside of the first settlers, like outside of the first, let's say, like outside of everybody that came here up until like maybe the early 1800s or so, and even then, we're not counting. We're going to set aside slavery because that wasn't their choice. But the people who came here by choice, when there was the huge immigrant influx into the United States, into America,
there's been a bunch of them.
I'm talking like when it really first started, which was like not a little bit later than very early 1800s. Again, discounting the people who came here as colonizers. A lot of it was, I mean, we talked about indentured servitude earlier and everything. Like most of it wasn't good, and there were a good amount of people who made their way here for sure. But the problem, I think the difference is that in the tower, it seems that doesn't really happen. The families that run the tower are the families that have been running the tower. The people, the families that run Pelthia, and I can't remember the one that's above the Silk Reef that Pelthia always fights with. I can't remember the name of it, but so I think that it's not a good place to go, but there's certainly a lot of very tricksy guides that make it seem like you want to be there, but that's because the tower needs people to come there in order to continue running. They need the people on the beer merry-go-rounds. They need people stoking the fires in the parlor. They need people in the baths to create the steam. They need the hods to carry everything up and down the Black Trail. So, and people die in the tower all the time, and not just hods. So it's very much they need to draw people in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That much is obvious. And in drawing them in, sometimes people are caught up in the web of the Sphinx, who, finds these people who are severely injured and makes them into wakemen
which I'll be honest, sounds like a better deal than being a hod.
I mean,
well, yeah.
Well,
just about everything seems like a better deal than being a hod.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, for everything that's going on in the tower, the wakeman is, much as it sounds horrible, it sounds like the best deal around once you're stuck in this web of this place.
I mean, it doesn't even sound horrible. Let's be real, because you're getting, a really, you're getting their. Well, it's steam powered bionics. I don't know if there's a term for that at all, but you're getting something that is worthwhile, and you're able to still maybe not live totally your own life, but you're still your own person, able to kind of make a difference, I guess. Whether or not it's a good one, that's a question, because Edith, like, we only know Edith and the Red Hand and Marat. Marat chose to give up the power that he had as a wakeman because he didn't like the contract that he signed into. Edith is at this point in time useless in her mind because her arm is useless. I mean, and really, like, honestly, that's got to be uncomfortable as hell too. Not gonna lie, just this dead weight of like, think about it. If your arm is asleep forever, but also weighs 100 pounds. That's horrifying. So, and then you've got the Red Hand, who God only knows what the hell's going on with that guy.
I got news to you. Even not weighing 100 pounds, if all your arm could do is be at your side and just take weight on your shoulder without having any sort of, it would probably be pretty miserable.
Yeah. But on that note, I don't want to spoil anything for part 3. So I think we should close it out.
Okay.
Real quick before I do, any last thoughts?
No, I'm just excited to read part 3 since apparently I'm the only one.
Well, Nami hadn't read it.
That's true, but Nami hasn't.
I blame that I flew across the country and I started part 3 like right before I flew across the country. So I was like, I could be on my computer doing things, or I could finish this book that I'm really into.
And I must admit, I thought we were doing the whole. And I must admit, I thought we were doing the whole book this week. So I
we're splitting all of them because otherwise these webcasts would be like 2.5 hours long, especially if Nami was here.
It already would have been 2.5 hours if Nami was in here.
We love you, Nami. Okay.
We do.
Well, on that note, we will be back on Wednesday, February 16th, 2 weeks from today, reading.
That is not Valentine's Day, right?
It is not. It is not. It's 2
Valentine's
days
Day
after.
The 14th, Jonathan.
Do people care about Valentine's Day? I don't.
Sort of.
That's okay. I personally do not. But no, Wednesday, February 16th, we'll be back to cover the second half, aka part 3 of Arm of the Sphinx. So much happens, and this book is really good. The series is really good. Cannot wait to discuss the second half of this book. Once again, I'm Tara, along with Nick and Jonathan. Thank you for joining us for Sagas and Sass, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye-bye.